Try this again. Let us pray. Gracious and holy God, as we gather, as we listen, as we hear each other, as we listen and hear ourselves, as we communicate, make us aware of your presence. Open us, open our hearts, our minds, our spirits, and our bodies. Open us, fill us, guide us, that we may be inspired to move beyond what is, to create new realities of equality and power that is shared for all your people. In the name of Jesus we pray. And the people of God said,
Amen.
Amen.
We were in the middle of a prayer. All right, yeah.
No, you're not the program.
Close over you.
We've already prayed for you. You know, one of the things I've always enjoyed about this learning of listening, it helped me to realize how much I didn't listen. And it helped me to realize how much I listened to different people. I have found that in my relationship with my husband, we listen to each other probably more than I have ever listened to anyone else. We've never had an argument because we listen to each other. But I also discovered that I have not been a good listener to my children. So I'm learning to do that. I always wanted to be the mother. It was always, I am right. What do you mean? Questioning me. So I need to learn to listen to them. And they're adults, so that's another whole thing. They're adults, and I need to learn to listen in a different way. And in my work as an anti-racism facilitator for the denomination, I learned to listen in yet another way. I learned to listen as an African American that had to be really clear what I thought I heard. Was that what I really heard? Did they really say that? And maybe they were talking about something else, but because I came with these preconceived notions of what I thought I was going to hear, I had to learn to listen to people who have disabilities, that when they say, I can't get up the ramp, am I saying, well, God, they're complaining again? I had to learn to listen to my gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, and to listen to what they were really saying. Are they saying that I want to come and take control because my issue is more important, which is what I always heard? Are they saying, I want to be a part of this community. I want to bring what I have to offer to this community. So listening is really an important skill that we need to learn. I think one of the things in listening, it's necessary for us to slow down. Take the time that is necessary to give your full attention to the task of listening. Listen first to understand. Many of us listen to hear what the speaker, when the speaker breathes, so we can jump right in. So we're not listening, we're saying, okay, I want to be able to say my part. And that's how we listen. So we really aren't listening. Suspend certainty. How many times do we think, oh, I know what they're going to say? So we're not really listening for their view. And encourage differences. A lot of times I have found, for me personally, working in the Presbyterian in San Francisco, that if I didn't think, I work with a lot of pastors, and sometimes pastors can be, pretty overwhelming with their views, and they don't really want to hear the difference. If you're not thinking the way they think, then they don't want to hear your view. And it's not just pastors. I'm just using the pastors right now because that's the first thing that came to my mind. But pastors are not the only one. I discovered that as an African American, if I didn't assimilate, if I didn't talk the way the community that I was with at the time, if I didn't talk the way they talked, then it just wasn't, I wasn't accepted. So encourage differences. I may have a little bit of a, I'm from New Orleans, so I may have a little bit of an accent there. And my husband says to me that I don't speak the King's English. And I said he wasn't my king anyway. So, and speak up. I remember as a kid growing up, even as an adult, I did not speak up. And for those that know me well, they probably say they can't believe that. But speak up and have our voices heard. So that's kind of the beginning of how, in my mind, of how we would build the beloved community. Because I think if you don't listen, there's no way that you can build community if you're not listening to all the folks that's in the community. I'm going to ask each of you to, and I hope I have enough of these little guys here. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions here.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, that would be great. I have some pens. I want, and these are small pieces of paper because I don't want you to give me a story here. I don't want you to tell me. I purposely made these papers small. I want 3 things that you would do in your community to help your community become the beloved community. 3 things. And I'll give you a few minutes to write those out. And then I'm going to have you share those with us. And then in the end, I'm going to keep those. Those meaning your pieces of paper. Yes. Yes, I will. 3 things that you would personally do in your community to help your community become the beloved community. I know that was a lot of communities, huh? Okay. So I think what we'll do is, if you've completed all 3, then we'll start with whoever wants to share first. I didn't expect so many people, so oh, great.
Lead them, pray with them, for them, in front of them after listening, and World Cafe discussions.
Good. Next person? Whoever wants to share.
I just recently moved to the area, and so some things that they did to bring me into that community, one was to welcome all who come, and not only welcome, but to encourage participation in a variety of events, and third, to pray.
Oh, thank you very much. Anybody else?
I'd say to share stories, and maybe do some intentional awareness creating of diversity. I think, I learned quite a bit about the LGBT community. We have a gay son. I've done some racism training. I don't know anything about disabled training. And make our church more welcoming to the community of people that are right in our surrounding neighborhood. And that would be maybe more Hispanics than we're.
That's interesting that you say that, because I've always advocated for making the church more welcoming for the community that surrounds the church, as opposed to the church that's just for the people in the church already and not reaching out. So that was good. Anyone else? Yeah.
I'd say share Jesus, share food and love, and be a good neighbor.
Good.
I said to reach out to others. I may stand back and then wonder why nobody is talking to me. To listen more carefully and to decide if I really need to speak. I may speak when it's nonsensical or not needed.
That's a good thought.
Decide.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Thank you. Yes.
I said, listen better to the people I get tired of hearing talk.
Ah.
Spend more time listening at coffee hour after church and ask people what they need from me.
That's a good one. I will share with you. I have a one of our core members is Korean, and we like to hug. I'm not too much of a hugger, but I think because I've assimilated a little bit, I tend to hug more than I normally would. And so I assumed that my Korean brother wanted to hug. But then I said, I need to ask him. And he said, I prefer that we didn't hug. So what you said, you know, just ask people what they want. Anyone else?
I have one.
Oh, okay.
Linda, you and I began this conversation yesterday a little bit, and I have been thinking about it for the last 24 hours. And I thought we need to, and we questioned some of the dynamics in our congregation. And my first thought was engage them in that ask, and then we in turn listen. And then that takes it from the ask to the listen to the action.
That sounds good.
That's kind of how
Yeah.
I processed that over the last 24 hours.
Oh, that's interesting that you carried that. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Teach people how to share power and that their power, I'm thinking of elders in a session in a church that's dysfunctional right now, just because some people arrogated to themselves power and knowledge, and they weren't willing to share it with anybody else, you know, in case they would suddenly get hit by a truck, you know, the church would be really out of it, you know,
Right.
as far as that person's skill or sharp. So, anyway, you want that piece of paper? Anyway, it's
I
not
do.
written down
No,
in an
that's okay.
organized
No,
manner,
that's all right.
but-
And
I thought that-
and that wasn't what I wanted. I wanted exactly what you've given me.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I was thinking a little more outside just a local congregation, and being clear, standing up with people, you know, whatever it is, that we're not going to tolerate hate crimes, that there's not a place for this in our community. And to, you know, find out what people who may be victims of that, you know, what do they most need from us? In what way is that helpful for us to stand up with them, rather than just assuming that,
Just assuming.
you know, that there's a certain way to do it?
Great.
Because I'm hearing from people of color that some of the things that their white friends are doing are not that helpful or meaningful to them, and in some cases may even be setting back the cause of equality and justice.
That's
And
good.
so I feel sort of, okay, you know, what can I do? And I feel a little bit paralyzed about that, and so that's why I'm here, because I'm not sure what is helpful.
I think it's good when we are not sure what's helpful. Sometimes we assume, and I remember someone asking me once, why don't black people vote? And I said, I can't speak for all black people. I mean, so how can you assume that I have this answer for you? That sort of baffled me. I thought, okay, do I? Anyway, I'm not going to go into tell you what I thought. I mean, so I think conversation there's lots of material available to have conversations in community. I subscribe to an online information source. That's what I'll call it. It's called Everyday Democracy. And a lot of the information that they provide, and I read it, it helps me to not just talk about racism. It helps me to talk about mental illness. Mental illness is very important in my life, and the stigma that comes with mental illness and not knowing. And I have a daughter who has paranoid schizophrenia, and boy, have I learned. I have learned so much about mental illness. I think that if in my family we had talked about it more, and I had really listened about just all of the discussions that was going on in my family, I would have understood my mother, and because she also had mental illness. So she's no longer here, but we talk. And I say to her, okay, Mother, I understand. She says, I was trying to tell you that. Yeah, she says that often, I think. But I understand. I listen to people. I facilitate a family support group with NAMI. And when I listen to the family members, I begin to understand a little bit more about what's really going on. I began to understand more things about my daughter. So listening is important in everything that we do. I mean everything, just absolutely everything. It helps us. Anyone else?
I have this as a couple things on there that you already have, but,
Okay.
But I am involved in a lot of organizations, and I have tried and continue to try to have space within an agenda for the meeting where each of us can share a snippet of something that is important in that connected or being connected, one or the other, in that group, so that we have that opportunity.
You know, when you say that, I don't think people realize how important it is to share, and I'm on a couple of boards, and our job is to come together to help those who are in need. But we never talk about the needs of the group. We come and we fight about what's right for this group that we're going to serve, but we never build community with ourselves. And we also don't ask the group what they need. We assume we don't listen to them. Anyone else?
Linda, I think that, going back to your original thought about literacy, I remember when I first was doing hospice work, that chaplain that I was mentioning under, she said, this is the most important tool that you'll ever have in hospice work. And she brought out this huge picture of an ear.
Oh.
I didn't get all of that at first.
Right.
And it's only after 10 years of hospice work that I understand the validity and the importance of the ear. And because the ear opens us up to all those different other levels of care.
Right.
You know, from the ear, we learn to discern what's appropriate and not appropriate with different cultures that we go to, the bedsides, and we enter their homes into. And practicing just the presence, the ministry of presence, and that's listening. And God reveals what is needed as you listen to the person that's ill or the family of the ill person. And my congregation changes every day. My people change every day. And listening has become the most important thing to do, because from there I get my outline if I'm listening to God's will for each patient that I tune to. And also with the listening comes with that one important ingredient of open-mindedness. We got to keep open-minded because of the different cultural backgrounds that we're dealing with, the different takes on illness and how you deal with illness in families, and how different cultures deal with death itself. So it's just kind of an ever-going, changing, transparent, fluid thing that Christ moves within you to help you minister to the people that are your beloved for the day. Who's my beloved for today? Who has God asked me to bless today? And I don't know who this is from, but it stuck with me very early on in my ministry. It says, people don't care who you are. They don't care who you are until they know that you care. It's very valid for me to start my day with that thought. I don't care if I'm a pastor. I don't care if I have a PhD in this or that. All they want to know is that I care. And from there, maybe we'll have a relationship. Maybe there I'll ask you about your life, your wife, your children. That's how it is. I just find it's just the big ear is always stuck with me. Just listen. So it's a good, and you keep coming back to that listening and listening and listening is so important.
It is. It is. I think if you leave here with nothing else today, I think the tool of listening more, it's in every situation that you're in, if you begin to listen. Yes.
Let me just kind of open this a little bit.
Okay.
The beloved community is also multimodal. There are many modes of communication. So I kind of want to challenge us a little bit to expand from listening and hearing, which takes this, so that sisters and brothers who are deaf, they don't use that language. They don't understand. They would challenge it. Right now, they would challenge us and say, if this is something on diversity, why are you not including me? So the language that they would use is perceiving and understanding. And because that is able to capture those who are not able to hear. Because the people who understand themselves and self-identify as deaf also don't understand that they are a disability. So they would not, in fact, they would probably not be in this session because they would say, we're not a disability. Maybe because they're black or because they're gay or something else, but the deaf community understands itself to be a culture into and of itself. And so they would argue and challenge us right now to say, instead of listening and hearing, understanding and perceiving, communicating. So I would like us to think more about, along with hearing and listening, to also understanding, so that I can hear what you're saying, but do I understand what you're saying? And so to push that a little bit.
I have, my oldest daughter has a hearing problem. She had an illness when she was a baby. That's what, the doctors say when kids have colds, you really got to watch that. And Monica, we never put her in a special class. She took lots of dance lessons, so what Monica was able to do, she could hear, but she just couldn't, there were certain tones she couldn't hear. But she could feel the music.
Yeah.
She was an extremely good dancer. And what we also did for Monica was to, we had someone in the community that taught pottery lessons. She could feel the wheel. She could close her eyes. And I don't know anything about, the whole pottery process. I have never been artistic in that way. But Monica could feel it. She would close her eyes and she would feel. And so you're right. I mean, there are many different levels of getting to know the person. Listening is the one that I'm starting with, but CORE will have a series of how can we build the beloved community, and
I
that
like the idea of the beloved community being multimodal
yeah,
and
yeah,
having many modes of communication.
Yeah.
Rather than focusing upon just a few.
and this is just one.
Yeah.
This is just one, but we'll have many sessions where we can talk about the things, some of the other kinds of things, and maybe you can help lead us into that. But I do understand with Monica, I do understand the whole hearing and not hearing part, and so clearly, I do understand that. Anyone else?
Several years now I've been wrestling with, and probably not getting very far with, the idea of how do you ask good questions. Because I'm not that I'm afraid of silence, but if our task is to try to get to know someone, what are good questions to open with so that people can tell us their stories or tell us their issues, or so it just continues to be that's an issue for me, and I think if I can figure out how to ask good questions and sit back and listen, that will make a big difference.
Anyone have any suggestions on how we could?
CBE training? CBE training? No, I know I'm kind of joking, but in a sense, like, it really taught me a lot about the right questions to ask and being able to really ask questions that are reflections of what they're telling you already, and being able to kind of open up.
Linda,
Yes.
I find myself being more open, talking to people I don't know that I used to be.
Right.
And I have found that if I notice they have a pretty sweater or something, I start with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll start talking from them, and then we can go with wherever we want to go. But I learn a lot of things about people just by commenting on how they look, or I see you're reading that book, have you read other things from that person?
It's interesting. Yeah, I can, yes.
As a pastor in the parish, mostly in small churches, because I was the pastor and I was calling on their home, the first thing I wanted to know was, would you tell me your faith story? Or would you tell me what you think about God? Or, because I had the excuse because I was the pastor. And the coolest thing was to find in a congregation of, well, the first one I served was 38 people. It was 38 different stories. I mean, the diversity was, and I learned real quick that different people get it about being connected to God and Jesus in a variety of ways. And it has to do with our personalities and our life experiences and all that. So I end up hearing a lot about their life if I start with that, but I don't start. When I meet strange people on the street or in different contexts and they've got a really cool something on, I'll say, wow, that's beautiful. And often they'll come back with a comment, oh yeah, I like this because I love strawberries and it's got a strawberry or whatever. And oh, yeah, I love strawberries too. Anyway, it starts with something very trivial, but if the person is friendly and wants to continue the conversation, it can go any number of ways. Yeah, anyway.
I think for me, what I ask is, how are you? And it's amazing. I remember I was recently in Freddie's putting some money on one of my kids who doesn't have a job right now. You know, those little cards, the green dot, whatever they're called. And so the lady that was helping me, I said, how are you? And she says, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. But I listened with more than just my ears, as Brett was saying.
Got the body language, right?
Got the body language.
Yeah.
And I said, no, how are you really doing? She said, oh, I got this really bad headache, and I just had a bad, and I thought, and that started it. I mean, so usually how are you doing? Or how's everything going in your life? I remember years ago when I met this really great man who didn't have time for lunch with me, and we had lunch, and I said, so how's everything going in your life? We spent 2.5 hours with this lunch, and he ended up being my husband, and we got married. But I listened. I listened to what he was saying, and it was just, so how are you? How's everything going on in your life? I mean, and that usually opens people up. When you ask them, the key to when you ask someone, how are you doing? Do you really want to know how they're doing? And there are times when I really don't want to know. And so when I ask, I make certain that I really want to know, and God has given me the gift of listening. And not all the time. I don't want to listen to everyone all the time. I really don't. I don't want to have someone come over to my house all the time and tell me all this stuff that's going on in their life. I don't want to do that all the time. But there are times when I'm open for listening. And I just say to them in response to what you asked, how are you doing? What's going on in your life? People want to tell you, but people also want to know that you want to listen to them.
Yeah, one thing that I find, because I have a couple of problems right now, health-wise, I'm not sure they really want to know. That they say, how are you doing? And they expect me to say, fine, I'm just fine, how are you? But I'm not fine. Do I dump it all on them, or what do I do?
I think if they ask you, I remember when I called you and we were talking, and I really wanted to know how you were doing. Part of it is because as a committee member of CORE, I care about you on that level. I care about you as a person that's just beyond CORE, that's another level. And I really wanted to know. And I was actually, my heart was a little sad that I hadn't taken time to really ask you before, when you shared with me what was going on. And then I prayed for you in my own time of silence. I prayed for you. So I really wanted to know. Yes.
Well, I was going to, can I change the...
You can change, yeah.
Because I've been wondering about this, about listening, and about story and narrative. And what to do about trying to get into somebody's story. And how to begin. And I just walked out of the dismissal one to come over here because it is about listening, and they were talking about, we've got to listen to these congregations that want to leave. But when the narrative is so different, I have some very super conservative friends that we sit in the hot tub together at swimming pool after we work out, and they're super conservative, and I can't even enter their narrative. I mean, so it's impossible for me to listen to them because we have nothing in common to even engage them engage them. And if I say anything how I feel, it's a shutdown. So I'm just trying to figure out how we can listen to each other when we have different narratives, complete different stories. How do you even get into somebody else's story? You begin to listen to their story.
Anyone have any suggestions on how they would do that?
The only thing I did when I mean, the first thing I would have done is get out of the hot tub, because this isn't fun. But because I don't like conflict. But if I had the opportunity, I would ask them, how did they arrive at those things that they are so,
That's a good,
you
yeah.
know, and that's always interesting, because
Where they're coming from.
yes, yeah. How did you arrive at that conclusion that it was so important?
That has developed your whole narrative
And
around
then they
that
feel
event,
listened to. Because before, they're in the position of, I'm the only one with the right answer.
Right.
And I always want to know how they arrived at their right answer. And it was amazing to me to find out how often it was because, you know, somebody told them with an authority, or they grew up with that or
Well-
something. They didn't think it through for themselves.
The clergy letter is a good example, evolution versus creationism. How do you enter into those two stories and talk to each other?
Oh, well, see, I just asked, would you like to hear what I think and how I arrived at it? Because I can hold creation and evolution together and I explain that to them in how I can, you know, I don't have problems with that. But anyway.
You know, sometimes it's really difficult to listen and have a conversation with people that have views that are just so different from yours.
Views different than opinion.
And
That's
opinions,
the tough part.
yeah, but, you know, views sort of,
Yeah.
they cross into
They
the...
create- yeah,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, right. And that's not always so easy, yes.
Yeah, I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, which I was...
Oh my goodness, I never knew that about you.
Well, and I was programmed into that. And
Right,
I
right.
was very kind of spiritual and mystic and everything as a kid, and that's the only thing I knew. And so
Yes, yes.
when I married Bruce on our first date, he said, Jehovah's Witness, wow.
I can just hear Bruce saying that. Right,
Well,
right.
but God has always been there and gave me a book that absolutely freed me. But the point I wanted to make is that there's a great amount of security in having all the answers.
Yes, yes, you're right, safe.
Right,
Really, I
right,
mean,
yeah.
that's where it's at.
Yeah,
And so, but there's no growth at all.
right. So part of that is the emerging faith development business. You know, we get our identity with other people who believe, but then when who believe that, you know, exactly the same thing we did, but then we're supposed to, in normal, quote, healthy faith development, we're supposed to individuate and figure out answers for ourselves and who we are called to be. And it might be a little different,
Right.
you know. Yeah.
Yep, yes.
I was just going to say, I mean, kind of speaking and listening and hearing this conversation as being a young white man who is choosing professional ministry. I think I am feeling a calling to receiving the dialogue because my voice. You know, and trying to seek out voices that are very different than mine, and listening and using and understanding and trying to garner a greater knowledge. Because I think I will speak from my perspective in saying that I think I'm at a transition point where the voices need to be not white heterosexual male. Like, voices need to be others. So I am trying to, I mean, the things that I wrote down, because I also work in a context that is a church that is very white, in a neighborhood that's very white, in a city that's very white. You know, so a part of me is saying, you know, building relationships with people not represented in my community, actually seeking out relationships with others who are not represented in my community, providing opportunities for people to actually speak on a regular basis and talk to the community and express in ways that we can start to receive in my community voices that are not there. And then also trying to push for greater inclusion in everything that I'm involved with. And it is kind of coming down to that idea of being comfortable with the unknown and not knowing the answers, and maybe being willing to receive ideas and thoughts and ways of doing and being that are different than what my norm is.
You broaden your frame of reference.
Yeah.
That's
What
it.
you're doing.
Yep.
Yes.
And I think building on that, one of the things that I've always tried to do, because I was, as a teenager, early 20s individual, I was shocked that people didn't have a way to talk to people who were different than them, because I had been raised. I had a black foster brother. We had Jewish neighbors that we went back and forth and did each other's holidays, and I just had no notion. My Girl Scout troop had a partner troop at Fairview, which was Oregon's facility for people with disabilities. So I had no concept that people didn't have in their lives. And I have an uncle and aunt who were gay and lesbian, but it was okay. We included their partners in all whenever they were around. It was like, what? So I have a hard time talking to people who haven't had experiences like that, who haven't been in communities where that has been just a part of your life. And it doesn't have anything to do with color or even our being liberal or conservative. It has to do with our life experiences a lot of times. And I think that for me, that was a steep learning curve to find out that other people didn't, get.
And that's why you're a teenager, right, or sort of an older teenager,
uh-huh.
when we become aware of those things,
I need to say that our time is up. It's getting up here, and it's I think as you go on, through the day and listen to each other. I think the other thing I want to leave you with is that in order to listen to others and to present yourself as someone that is open to listening, you have to spend time with yourself. You have to spend time. For me, what works is I pray. I read a lot of devotionals. I really like to cook. Cooking is like therapy. Take care of yourself so that you're more open to listening to others. Even those people that have their opinions are so different. And then you just have to make the decision how much you want to put yourself in that environment. I don't put myself in that kind of environment because there's also the other side of me that I have anxiety issues. So, I have to deal with that. But just make sure you prepare yourself and read and pray, and God's always there. We just have to listen when He talks to us.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank
When
you.
she cooks, you have to eat.
I do.
It's good.
I need to say that I only have a few resources. I didn't think I'd have this many people, but I was involved with the Presbyterian women in writing some of the material that we needed, and I just love this material. I have lots of these from my work in the San Francisco Presbytery, but I only have a few copies. There's a resource that I have on the table, the Self-Development of People table. There's a resource that you can also download. It's a good resource, and it's on the table, Self-Development of People in the area there. But if whoever wants one of these, I do have a few. I'm going to give them away.